Welcome into the I-80 Boys College Football Show. As always, I'm Christian Hunt, and that guy right over there, that older-looking gentleman with a tan, is...
Yeah, with the tan, Chris Vaca. Christian, how we doing, my man? It's been good over here. Some storms this last weekend, but how you been holding up?
Like you said, storms is a pretty big understatement, Chris. That was, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We are okay. I know a lot of people got affected, obviously, in the Nebraska, Iowa, Oklahoma regions of the country. So obviously our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody with that. Hopefully everybody's safe and, it didn't cause too much damage. So, no, but I've been doing good, Chris. On the day after the storms, a game was played of sorts.
Yes.
Your Nebraska Cornhuskers played their spring game on Saturday. I want to get your thoughts, Chris. What did you think about the game? There's one guy that everybody can't seem to not talk about now when you talk about the Cornhuskers, and I'm not talking about the kicker or the special teams here. I'm talking about, obviously, Dylan Raiola. I want to know, what did you think about the game? What did you think about Raiola? Give me your rundown on Nebraska.
Yeah, I watched a majority of the game. I did not watch the end. But overall, it looked like what I thought it was probably going to look like, Christian. My thoughts, first off, spring games, a lot of people say this, but that's not the end-all, be-all what your team's going to be, in September. But I thought Nebraska overall, compared to most teams I've watched this summer, as far as spring games go, they were pretty competitive. I know we didn't have a lot of ones on the defensive side of the ball out there, which I understand. I get that. I like seeing the twos out there. Some of the guys, obviously there's position battles going on and all that, and I think that's a great thing. But overall, I thought Nebraska looked pretty good, both sides of the ball. Everybody's favorite topic, Dylan Raiola. I thought he looked really good. I thought he got the ball out quick. I thought his progressions were good. His reads were good. Threw some beautiful balls. We talked about this one the other day. It looked like he threw that one early in the game just to see how far he could throw it. The kid definitely has a cannon. But I was really impressed with actually the big question, and I think it, a little bit answered for me, was some of the receivers. There was a kid that's what the hell is his name? It's one of the receivers from Florida. He's a freshman.
Was it
Barney
Bell?
Jr.? There it is. That's the kid.
Barney.
He played really well. He is really, really fast. I think he's a guy that I didn't know much about. Played pretty well. We did have a couple injuries too to one of the receivers. I don't know how significant it is, but overall, Christian, like I said, I'm not going to get too hyped up about it. I'm not going to just brush it under the table, but I thought Nebraska looked pretty good compared to most teams in the spring games. I didn't think that, the defense was just dominant. I think we know what the defense is going to be this year, but offensively, I was impressed with Raiola. I thought he threw the ball well. I actually thought Harburg looked much more improved from last year. We got to see him play a lot last year. He looked pretty good in this spring game as well, but that's enough of me rattling on. Christian, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, Chris, I thought exactly like you said. I thought all three quarterbacks really played really well between Daniel Kalen, Heinrich Harburg, Dylan Raiola. To me, Raiola, and like you said, it's a spring game. I know a lot of people are going to have their own reactions to it. Here's the reality of it, though. Heinrich Harburg, to me, played like a junior that has been around this program and has been taking steps to get better. There were times last year where, with Heinrich Harburg, I think he had to rely on his running ability more so than being able to throw the football. Yeah. And there was, you can tell he's put a lot of work into it, and he's gotten much better. I think Dylan Raiola, with the ability to place the football, his decision-making, some of the passes that he threw in that particular game. I mean, there was one that was an incompletion, and he threw it. I mean, it had to have been 65 yards, and it looked very effortless. And that's something you just can't. You're not going to teach that. You're not going to coach that. Either you have the arm strength or you don't. I mean, guys work for years and years to develop arm strength. And a lot of it comes into different mechanics and such. But, I thought Raiola looked really, really good for a guy that 3 months ago was in high school.
100% agree.
Granted, it was against a lot of twos and a lot of threes. This is something me and Chris have talked about a little bit, off the show here. And that is, I think it was good for Nebraska. Not a lot of number one defenders on your, that are slotted to be starting for you guys and come the fall were played in that game. And at first I kind of had the reaction that I know Chris was, and that was like, well, I don't know about that, because I still think a couple years ago when, they played the spring game and they did the wrap up, and then that year they struggled on defense to really tackle. I think they practiced physicality. I just don't think they wanted to get anybody hurt. We look at, what Nebraska has coming back this year on the defensive side of the ball. They have, 8 guys that are going to be starting for them on the defensive side of the ball that are seniors that will graduate and either go on to the NFL or, just be done with football, run out of eligibility. So in that regard, I like what Rule and the program did where they're getting these young guys in. They're kind of circulating them in. They're letting them play. So that way they're going to get them more snaps. And I think come the season, they're going to be doing that again. They're going to be rotating guys in. They're going to be expecting them to play because Matt Rule's trying to look at this for the years down the road. What happens next year when, again, presumably the defense is still really good next year and you lose those 8 guys, and then let's say Tony White, for example, they have another great year and they're top 10 next year in defense, and Tony White takes a job somewhere, to be a head coach. What are you going to do then? Because I guarantee you, this is where you start thinking about that. How do we rotate guys in? How do we get them reps at this level? How do we get them, set up for the best success and to set us up for the best success in this year and next year? On the defensive side of the ball, I'm pretty, I'm okay with, what I saw. I think, again, not to blow all this out of the way, the thing about Nebraska is we kind of in spring training and in the spring games and everything is, and we get towards the season, Chris. What does this mean for Nebraska once the season gets here? The UTEPs of the world, the Colorados, the Northern Iowas that they're going to be playing. And what I think for me that this game showed me is Nebraska is going to be able to put up points, which is going to be very good for you guys.
Yeah, no, you said it. I think the defensive side of the ball this year, I'm not overly worried. I think, from what we saw last year, the turnaround they made last year, obviously you want to still take steps forward this year defensively. And I think Nebraska will. I think Tony White, probably one of the best things we ever did was pay the guy to keep him. But yeah, the big thing, we averaged 16 points per game last year in offense. That is grade A trash is what it was. And we led the country in turnovers last year, dead last. That has to change. I think that's going to change. It must change if we want to get to where we want to get to this year, obviously. But even if Nebraska averages 25, 26 points a game this year, which would be huge from the comparison of last year, which I just mentioned, yeah, I don't see why Nebraska doesn't beat these teams and beat them fairly handily because of the defense. Should be able to get the other team's offenses off the field. Matt Rule's going to run the football this year, and I want him to run the football a lot. I don't need Raiola throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game. I don't think we need that. I don't think that's the game plan this year. But, where we really struggled last year offensively, like you mentioned, was the turnovers and also not being able to throw the ball in the third and long, right? Making those passes, making those reads. I'm not worried about Raiola. It's not easy to do. I think he's going to have some ups and downs, but we can rely on that run game, sustain drives, and instead of kicking field goals, get touchdowns.
Oh, yeah. Touchdowns. That's the big thing, Chris, like you said. To me, this kind of seems, and it's very early yet, but this kind of seems like the groundwork is being laid for, the big thing that when I think about Nebraska over the last couple of years is confidence. Their confidence in just, even against Georgia Southern, right? We go back to a couple years ago. There was no confidence there, right? It was just any of those games. It felt like you were holding your breath, waiting for something to happen. I think last year, they started to kind of do that against a lot of the teams they should have beat, the cupcakes, as it were. I think this year they take those steps forward and they get back to doing what they should be doing. Obviously, sooner rather than later, we're going to start looking at doing record predictions. We're going to wait till the actual transfer portal window closes, and then we're going to start looking at really giving our record and season predictions for what we think teams are going to be. I think for a spring game, the other thing I'm looking at is, and we touched on it a little bit, Malachi Coleman didn't play in this game. That's a guy that, again, the receivers looked fantastic in this game, so I'm not going to beat too much up on that. Malachi Coleman's a guy that, that's going to be him and Raiola. They're the combo that you want. Right? They're the combo that you want to get clicking come fall, come the next couple years. You want to get them involved. I know Nebraska has picked up some really talented guys, but I'm very curious. I couldn't really find anything when I was looking into this. Was he hurt? Is he just sitting out? Why didn't he play in this game? But I think there was a lot of people that they felt confident not playing in this game. The running backs, obviously, they're banged up. Was it Gabe Ervin and Ramiro Johnson? They're recovering still from injuries last year. So, it's just going to be really curious. I think once the fall gets back around here in the next 3 to 4 months, and this offense gets a lot of guys back and they're healthy, I mean, Nebraska on offense is going to be good. Again, the defense is going to be good. What is this? I guess the question that we got to answer here is, where does this lead as they look to go into this season, Chris? What do you want to see from this team? And I'm going to kind of give you one more question here with it too. Mm-hmm. Is Dylan Raiola QB1, or is there a legit quarterback competition?
No, there is. I'll answer that one first. No, he's definitely the QB1. We've heard a lot of coach speak and other people talk about there's a competition. Obviously, I want competition. I think the Daniel Kaelin kid's going to be good. He's from Bellevue over here. But no, Raiola is the best quarterback on the team. You saw that he had the most pass attempts. He's going to be out there this year, as he should. When you're a 5-star quarterback and you're coming to Nebraska, you got to play the kid. What do I want to see? I think this. You make a good point. Previously talking about this was. I thought the spring game, like I said, overall was great. It was good, fine. But I want to see them continue to get better, right? And I think when it comes to, we start the season off versus UTEP. They got a new coach. They weren't a terrible team last year. Nebraska should win this game by 4 or 5 touchdowns or more, though. And that's what I want to see with the confidence and what I want to see out of Nebraska. And I spoke about this last year a little bit. We lost to Minnesota in a close one last year. We turned around, lost to Colorado. What I want to see is Nebraska from week 1 to week 2 get better. From week 2 to week 3 get better. You know what I mean? And then by the time you're at the end of the season, where obviously we know who we play at the end of the season, it's the Ohio States, the USCs, the UCLAs, Wisconsin, and Iowa, we're playing our best football. Last year, Christian, you remember this very, very vividly. We talked a lot about Nebraska trying to get 6 wins last year. They couldn't win one of their last 4 football games. That was against Michigan State. That was against Maryland. That was Iowa and Wisconsin. We found ways to lose those games. I want to see the opposite this year. I want to see us start off strong. And we have you said it, a very favorable schedule to start off the year. We really do. And Nebraska needs to start beating these teams like Indiana, Purdue on a regular if we want to get to where we want to get to. What are your thoughts, Christian? What do you think too? I mean, as far as what you're looking forward to this season with the Huskers?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like you said, I think, as far as what's going to be put out there, there's a quarterback competition heading into the fall. But I think Raiola, you can't look at the kid and then look at what Harburg has even progressed to now and say Raiola isn't going to be the day one starter. I think that's first and foremost. I look at, like you said, just going out and taking care of business. I mean, the last time that Nebraska has beat somebody 52-3, it's been a while. Even some of the cupcakes, it's been a while. So I want to see them do that. I want to see them get past week 2 in Colorado. It's at home, for them. That's going to be a really big hype train coming into that game. I want to see them take care of business against Colorado. From there, like you said, the schedule is very favorable, right? I mean, here's the thing I look at. Well, because Raiola is going to be the biggest talking point probably for the Huskers, bar none, you know what I mean, as this season progresses. And, arguably is probably going to be one of the biggest talking points of college football, depending on how he does as the season progresses. Last year we saw Dante Moore, right? Very talented quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Go to UCLA and ended up, he didn't win outright, but he ended up starting basically from the second week on. He played really well against Coastal Carolina in their first game of the year. And Dante Moore, did what he was supposed to do against the competition that he was playing against. And then this weird thing happened in the Pac-12 last year where all of a sudden their last year of ever playing football as the Pac-12 conference, they all decided to be pretty good. So, and the defenses were good. Oregon State was really good on defense last year. Utah, really good on defense, right? And UCLA, to me, Dante Moore in particular, at times struggled in those games, and he played like a true freshman. But there was other times where he showed you flashes of what he could be. And I thought, for Chip Kelly and the UCLA program and how this ties into Nebraska is, look, even if you have some games where you go out, even if it's week 2 against Colorado, right? If the kid goes out and throws for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns against UTEP in week 1, and week 2 comes around and he throws 3 interceptions and looks god awful, don't give up on him. Okay? Yep. Do not give up on him, because that's what happens when you build the hype up to where it is. All right? And the coaching staff, even if this kid goes out and turns the ball over at a Jeff Sims like clip rate, stick with him, because you got to believe in him for the future. Because if you bench him, I can tell you right now, he will hit the portal and you will ruin his confidence. One of those 2 things will happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the way I look at it. And to me, I would say how I project Dylan Raiola, just looking at him, looking at the spring game, but it's not just the spring game. It's looking at what he did in high school, following this kid's high school career. I look at him to have somewhere between a Dante Moore-like season last year and a Trevor Lawrence-like true freshman year at Clemson. I think enough things are I think enough things are favorable. I didn't say he was going to have a Trevor Lawrence-like season.
I just said championship.
Somewhere in between, right? Yeah. Where, and again, Dante Moore just comes to mind because not a lot of true freshmen get to start the season off, as the quarterback. So somewhere in between that, like I said, I think the one thing he does have going for him is the schedule is pretty favorable. A lot of programs in the Big Ten are, breaking in first-year coaches. A lot of programs in the Big Ten, honestly, have the same defense, I would say, talent-wise, as what Nebraska played in that spring game. And, I mean, this kid, all he did was put up 2 touchdowns and 250 yards.
Yeah, no, he did look good, and I'm with you on that. And that was something I've been talking to a lot of people this offseason about was, the expectations on him are high already. They've been high on him since he's, was in high school, freshman, whatever. Don't give up on the kid, because college football is a whole different game, especially at the Power 5 level, especially at the Big Ten level, where defenses are pretty damn good in the conference, like throughout. He's going to have ups and downs. It's going to happen this year. It happened even with Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. It did. He had some games where he didn't play as well. It just happened. So, no, I and like I said, I don't think Nebraska fan base hopefully doesn't give up on him. I don't think that's going to happen here. But, some of these people out here, already thinking he's going to win the Heisman already and stuff like that. It's like, hey, pump your brakes a little bit. Let's slow the roll. Let's, we're not even in season yet. Let's just see how he looks. And, like I said, I don't want to get the kid hurt. I don't want him throwing the ball 50 times a game. Let's rely on that running back room. We got a loaded running back room this year. And one guy I want to throw this and kind of kick it back real quickly and mention this guy's name. Thomas Fidone, the tight end, looked awesome. This kid, I think, is going to be a first or second round draft pick by the time it's all said and done. I like him a lot. Uber talented, looked really good in the spring game. He had a bad injury last year. Just want to throw a shout out to him, by the way. I forgot to mention his name.
Yeah, Chris, I love it. Like you said, I mean, Thomas Fidone, the tight ends actually had a really good spring, and a good showing, obviously, on Saturday. Couple more things, and we'll kind of get off here. But, Bonner looked pretty good. I mean, he was a fullback / tight end kind of player. They moved to wide receiver. He had 4 targets, 58 yards and a touchdown pass. So he's going to be, that kind of, that more mold that a lot of NFL tight ends are starting to go to, or receivers, I guess you want to say. Bonner's got a really good shot this year. The thing that Nebraska has for the first time in a long time for me, Chris, is they have depth.
Yes.
And that is something that is very hard to get, at a lot of programs, is having depth. I mean, you start thinking about, Iowa on offense. You start thinking about Northwestern. You start thinking about, Indiana, Wisconsin last year.
Yeah.
And you start thinking, oh, man, they just don't seem like they have the depth to really compete with some of these other programs. But then you start thinking about, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. What do they all have in common? They all have depth. And that's the thing you have to be an elite program. Now, elite Nebraska, it's been a little while. They need to get familiar with one another. And that starts with building confidence. But they got a lot of things lining up for them. And I think if you're a Nebraska fan, you should be very excited to get this season started.
Absolutely. I don't have much more to add, Christian. Like I said, the Huskers this year, let's go. And like I said, people, hopefully we keep the realistic approach this year with the Huskers. But they do have the schedule, the players this year. especially offensively, to do something special.